everyone. Welcome to the Ake Arts and Book Festival. Right now on this stage, we are all debuting. 2 debut authors. My first time holding a microphone on a stage, so please give us a round of applause. I'm just going to get right into it because a lot of their fans are here and I know they have questions. So I'm going to make my session as fast as possible. On behalf of people who have read this book and loved it, book clubs, private readers, I just want to thank both of you for writing this book. I am grateful your book exists, and thank you. Thank you for writing the book. All right.
Thank you, Amyn.
I will start with Francesca. When I finished reading the novel, I reflected a lot on the way you separated the parts, and named them butter, honey, pig bread. So I'm curious, at what point did the title reveal itself to you, and was this the original title from the beginning?
Hi. It's such an honor to be here, especially with Amyn, so thank you. And thank you so much for inviting me, Lola, and thank you everyone for being here. My mother's in the audience, and I think my brother will be here soon. So the title of the book came after I finished the first draft. It was a different title. But by
what was it?
It had 2 different titles. Initially, it was If You're the One Who Stays the Longest. And then it was A Tender Unkindness, which is just, what? But after I finished the draft, I knew it wasn't either of those books. And it's just the ingredients that popped out to me, because one of the characters is a cook, and food is just a big part of it. So it was, of all the ingredients in the book, these were the 4 that popped in my head. I like the way it sounded.
Were you the one who came up with the title, or was that your edit? Oh.
No, it was me. So when I heard back from the publisher, they were like, we love this, we would like to see a full draft, we would like to go. And I was like, yes, thank you, and the name is this now. Is that okay? And they said yes.
Awesome, awesome. Aiwa, this book has been accused of catfishing people, like on the streets. That's what they say on the streets. But that phrase, "tomorrow I become a woman," is a thread that runs through the entire novel. And I like when a title adds a little something to a creative piece instead of just labeling it. So what inspired the title of your book?
First of all, I should thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you to Lola. Thank you to Reader Books. And, so I'm really excited to be here. This is actually my first book festival, so I was like, yes. Thank you. So when I first started writing this book, so the very first draft, which was not a very good draft, but the very first chapter or the very first draft was basically in Uju's voice, and it was set a day before her wedding, and it basically said, "Tomorrow I become a woman," And I remember I wrote the first 10 chapters. I sent it to a friend, and she was like, "It's not there yet." But then I was like, okay, I just felt like I needed to have a very strong theme in mind that would also help my writing as I went back to start all over again. And I was like, wait, this actually makes so much sense. Tomorrow I become a woman. And I just lifted it. The book changed entirely, actually. But that first sentence was like, yes, this is that first. And one thing that inspired the title was, I don't know how many people here have read and many people haven't read it. But one question that was throughout the book, common thread throughout the book, was, when do I become a woman? So because that's womanhood is something that's dangled in front of women. Girls growing up, it's like, when this happens, you become a woman. Oh, but then when your menses come, you're a woman. When you get married, you're a woman. When you have children, you're a woman. And then
there's always a shifting
goalpost. And and then some people say, oh, when you have a first son, you're a woman. When you have more, it just keeps moving. And it's like, oh, when do I actually, get this thing, And so that's why I was like, tomorrow. It's always tomorrow.
It's Amazing. So you set the novel in a few years after the Nigerian Civil War, and I really appreciated how you created vivid images that showed like effect of political changes on everyday life. But the question is, why was it important for you to set the story in this era as opposed to more contemporary times, especially as the issues at the heart of the novel are still very much alive?
Two things. When I started writing, so many things in this novel are coincidental, and then also I remember when I first started writing, I was like, I want to address this thing, but then one very major problem is when you want to have certain conversations, even people our age say, oh, these things don't happen anymore. I was like, do you know what? I'm not even going to. I don't want that to even disrupt the conversation around this book. I'm going to go back in time. So at least you can't argue that it didn't happen then, you know? And so that's what took me back in time. But then I was having a conversation with my colleague around the Civil War, and she was telling me how her grandmother disappeared. And I mean, we all read Half of a Yellow Sun, but then to actually meet someone whose relative disappeared and just having that conversation, it was so poignant. And for me, it was, there was a way she spoke about it, and it made me really think about loss in a different way in terms of disappearance and the lasting effects it leaves. And I really it made me really go back. And it was around that same time that the Asaba massacre conversation was happening on Twitter. And I was like, I felt so moved by all of this. And I'm not Igbo, I'm not, but I just really wanted to write about it. And I was like, do you know what? Yes, I think.
I think you did a really good job. And you said you're not Igbo, but your depiction of Igbo-ness was really good. Francesca. One of the coolest things about butter honey pig bread, is the ability to travel seamlessly through time periods, places, and multiple POVs. I mean, what you did in chapter 4, no, not chapter 4, the last part, switching between POVs. I mean, you have to read this book if you haven't read it, but we're going. I really appreciated the intentionality of the techniques you used. When I was reading, I was like, is this a debut? Does she have an MFA? Where is it coming from? So can you speak a little bit about what influenced your narrative style? Because it's very unique.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, everybody, let me tell you what happened. Amyn reached out to me a couple years ago when my book came out, and we've been friends since. So we've had this conversation several times. So I'm going to try and include you. But if you catch me just looking at her and telling her, I'll include you. But yeah, the POV, or even just my style in general, very much informed by everything I read as a child. I read Sweet Valley High, Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, Babysitter's Club. Mm-hmm. And I mentioned those ones because those are books that, YA novels that have the speaker's name or the person whose point of view you're reading kind of at the top of the page. So that was just from what I read as a kid. I love that because immediately it situates you in the mind, even if the tense isn't like first person, the perspective is from a particular person. And so what they're experiencing is completely informed by their own, personality, their own experiences. So that's where I learned that. I guess that's the answer.
Okay, deeper into that, especially POVs. A lot of people who have read the book felt there are 3 main characters. A lot of people felt like they wanted more of Kambirinachi's POV, and it felt more like Taiye she has main character energy. So
some people just have main character energy,
But how did you hold yourself back? Because Kambirinachi's voice, we didn't hear a lot, but it was a very strong voice. So what informed the choice to hold back on certain characters, especially Kehinde and Kambirinachi?
Yeah, so a lot of those things happened in the editing process. So I was trying to illustrate how a person might be, or how a person might be in relationship, based on, the traumas they've experienced as children, or just the things that shape us. And so for Kehinde, she's not open. She doesn't share a lot. And so all of her story was told from her voice, because I won't spoil it, but she's a character who experienced something very difficult as a child, a kind of experience that, many people have different responses to that, but for this woman, she became very closed and controlling, and not controlling of other people, but controlling of people's access to her. So speaking from her own point of view and using her own words was very important. You don't know anything about Kehinde that she doesn't tell you. Whereas Taiye is a character without a lot of boundaries, and you know so much about her from what she tells her sister in her letters, from just like the omniscient narrator, me, following her around and be like, and then this happened, and she doesn't even know, but then this happened, right? You don't know that about Kehinde. You don't know anything she doesn't say. And then for Kambirinachi, I love that character so much because she was a character that was so far removed from my own realm of experience. Taiye and Kehinde are approximately my age, a bit older, Nigerian girls that grew up on the island, went to QC, like things that I could fathom and I could put myself, but for Kambirinachi I couldn't, so that required a lot more deliberation, a lot more research. Like a lot more, it's all imagination, but I really had to kind of, hi. I really had to reach deeper. And Kambirinachi she tells you who she believes she is, right? And as a reader, you're welcome to believe her, to interpret it how you like. And I want it kind of between Taiye and Kehinde, I wanted an in-between. I wanted a gap between what she was saying, or what me as the omniscient narrator was saying, and what you were seeing. And towards the end there, I'm grateful that it worked, but I took a risk in filling that gap. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. You wrapped it up nicely. Aiwa, you succeeded in writing some of the best villains in Nigerian literature. I'm not joking. Recently, these two characters, I don't know anyone who has read this book who does not want to unalive Uju's mom and Gozie. The rage from readers. And I think it's because of how well you wrote them. You had a little bit too much fun, I think, with writing those characters. So I know you already had, since it's loosely based on women's lives, the story was in your mind's eye. Did you develop the characters as you started writing, or you had already mapped them out, or they started appearing to you one by one?
I just want to say, I get messages all the time on Instagram that like, I hate Kosi, I want to kill him. And so I'm like the cover says, it's loosely based on stories of different women I know, and at least two women whose lives inspired this book have very difficult mothers, mothers that when they try to leave or when they try to do something different, they were like, like they literally made, and that's actually, and those women actually inspired Uju's mom, and then and a particular male character, male partner inspired Uju's husband, but also, I really did want people to feel rage, and even though I didn't want them to be cartoon-like characters, but I really did want to, because for me, growing up, I was inspired by reading. Like, whenever people ask me what were inspired, I always mention African authors, right? Like, I loved reading Buchi Mecheta. Like, I remember how I felt when I read Joys of Motherhood. And I was a teenager then, and I was like, I got to there, I was like, where's the joy? I was so angry. Like, and then, like, it really made me, and I was like, I want people to feel like that. I want people to finish my book and feel how angry I felt reading Joys of Motherhood, And I felt the best way to do that was to create these characters that people could be like, and because a lot of these people exist in real life. We know people whose mothers have pushed them into doing things they don't want to do. We know people who have this kind of partners. We know these people. So I wanted people to feel that rage and then transfer it to the people in real life. Like, you cannot continue doing this thing. And yeah, that's what happened.
Okay. Since the book is out now, are there any of the characters that still visit you in your mind? Like, do they come to you like for a novella, a short story? Is there any of the characters that?
So I loved writing Uju. I loved writing Uju. Like it was so personal. Like when I finished, I was sad. Like I didn't want, and I loved writing Aki, because one thing a lot of literary authors don't say, which I love to say, is I love romance novels. And for me, Aki was just like, because it was a literary novel, but I didn't want it to. I was like, let me put all my.
Let's have some hearts.
Let's because a book get heavy sometimes, and I really wanted a character that people could just be like, at least this one is manageable. And so actually, I'm working on something else.
Oh, okay.
And these two characters do appear. That's all I'll say for now.
Francesca, what about you? Do any of your characters still visit? I mean, we are looking for something. Maybe Timmy. I don't know. Wink, wink.
Yes, many of my characters are still. I'm writing other things, and I'm like deep in a character, and I'm like, Taiye, what? It's not. We finished. Thank you. Because when I build a character, it's characteristics that are very compelling to me, and so for Taiye, that kind of reckless openness and hedonism and messiness is a character trait that's compelling to me in people, in friends. So that keeps showing up. And then, Timmy. Honestly, all the men except for like the copy and paste two-dimensional bad men, I just really love. Like I just wanted to, similar to you, I think, right? Like just nice men that were good and nice and no wahala, no trauma, just lovely. So a few of them, like Wolfie and Timmy. So about the editing process, there's a character named Bobby. He's in there for like a moment. I wrote so much about Bobby, and so I want to use that. But my characters do visit me, and it's challenging sometimes.
One of my favorite characters from the book was Coca-Cola the cat. I still think about Coca-Cola.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. But are there works or authors that inspired your character development? Because the main characters are strong, but your side characters, they are all scene stealers. Nobody was a waste. I'm sure there are even conspiracy theories about one particular character in Kambirinachi's life, if they met in a former life, or like what is the attraction between, we can't call it an attraction, but there was something.
Yeah.
There are conspiracy theories about that.
Yeah. So I love character-driven stories. I love a good story. Like plot is like, yes, fine. What I'm most interested in when I'm reading is a character. Like, what's their motivation? Why are they like this? What's their interior world like? So editing was important. My editor was like, is this story about Bobby? Is this story about Kenny? What's this about? And so she really had to steer. She's like, I cut out so much. She's like, this is not a story about this person's love triangle. This is not about Taiye's addiction. This is about these three women. Because I really dig writing a character. But no, everything not to be dramatic, but I swear everything I've ever read, especially as a child, as a teenager, Joys of Motherhood ruined my life. And Tales of the Savannah, I was so upset. Oh, this Ghanaian, the beautiful ones are not yet born.
Ones are not yet born.
I'm still not okay. But yeah, and Chimamanda Adichie, Sefiata, books that I read as a teenager that were about other young Nigerian girls in Nigeria, regardless of the time, were really impactful. The two that come to mind are like Purple Hibiscus and Everything Good Will Come, but there's so many. There's so many.
Okay. Now we will take a reading from your book, Tomorrow I Become a Woman. Yes, we'll start with yours.
I thought we were going to start with her, so I was like...
77.
So this is page 77, 7th chapter.
No, sorry, it's the first chapter.
Okay, you want me to read from the first
Yes.
chapter? Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay, no problem. Okay. I'm going to marry him. We stood side by side in March of '94, arms around each other, with milky pasted smiles, displaying all our teeth for the cameramen shouting, "Oga, please look this way." And Madam, please move closer to Oga. As we cut the ribbon to the factory Gozie was opening in his hometown. Our pictures would appear in the glossy pages of society magazines, above flowery articles of the business exploits of Chigozie Azubike, a respected member of the community and his dutiful wife, one Obianju Azubike Ni Nweke, who stood by him through the toughest of times. Mama would buy dozens of copies and distribute them to all her friends and members of Indigo Women's Society of Lagos, and show every visitor that crossed the threshold of her household, of her and Papa's household. Her daughter, her own Uju, was now a star. Church members would approach me with timid smiles to say, "I saw you in so-and-so magazine," and compliment my expensive wrapper, ichafu, and designer shoes. And I would smile with just the right blend of pleasure, humility, and satisfaction, tilt my head elegantly and say, "Thank you." Just days before, an expensive earthenware vase with hand-painted roses, the one Gozie bought on his last trip to China, cracked on the wall just above my head and shattered in an icy rain around me. "You're a witch," Gozie screamed. And I knew I'll dream of those words, the letters dancing in circles around me. "You're a witch, you're a witch." Thank you.
So, and that's just the first chapter. Like, as you're landing into the book with that. There are so many emotionally heavy and tense scenes that caused readers to take breaks. We did take a lot of breaks. And I imagine it must have been tough for you also to write them. Can you take us through the process of writing these scenes and how you were able to get yourself out of the zones? And I feel like you've mentioned it, but were there other authors you were reading at the time that might have inspired, or maybe even music? What helped? The heavy ones and the light-hearted ones. Yes.
Okay. So they're writing, because this was written in the first person, and the writing process for me was I was really intentional about the readers feeling something. I really want, like, for me, the worst thing as a writer for me is like you read something I've written and then you're just like, that's nice, and then you move on, like, that's nice, you know? So I wanted people to feel something, so I had to put myself in a mental space, like, I wanted to be Uju, I wanted to feel what Uju felt. But then writing with that kind of process, man, it was very emotionally stressful. There's so many, like, there's several scenes in the book where I've shared this with you before, I actually cried, like, because I had to feel what Uju was feeling. I had to imagine myself in her shoes, in that position. Like, there's a scene in March of '97, you know, that starts, you know, and that was so painful to write. That took weeks to write because I had to take breaks. I had to be like, and I was working full time then. I had to be like, oh, you have to work. Like, you can't be like this, and, you know, we're going about.
How do you even explain it outside?
You know, like, are you mad? You know, we're Nigerians, like, we don't, like, what's doing you? And so, for me, it was just, it was really intense, you know. But, I mean, you talked about authors. Personally, I like to read writing that speaks to my writing voice. And one book that really speaks to my writing voice is Americana. I love that book. I tell everybody, I'm like, see, everyone says I have a yellow, so I'm like, see Americana. That's my book. and for me, like, because growing up, you know, when we were young, like, just picking up certain books, so it's like, because it was like we didn't have as many people as saying, like, to look up to, you know, was like any blight, and like, so, like, just seeing like African authors like this was just so, like, it was just so important to us to just, you know, to be able to connect to their writing, you know, regardless of anything, and for me that was very important. But I'm a big music person. I grew up listening to music. Like, my parents are very intentional with, like, training in music. And so, for the lighter scenes, for example, there's a scene with, anyone that's read this book, Let's Get It On is, like, such a big, part of this book by Marvin Gaye. And I listened to that song. I played it. In fact, the song knows I played it. I listened over, because I really wanted to get in the mood. I wanted to imagine myself in the 70s, in the car, at the back of a car. You know this scene, at the back of a car, the wind in my... I was there. I could feel it, the radio coming on, and then Marvin Gaye's voice just, filtering through. And so for me, that was such a joy to
You
write.
did a great job, because it was felt.
Thank
All the
you.
feelings you felt.
Thank you.
Okay, Francesca, we're going to do a reading from your book now.
Sorry, when you finish reading, I wanted to tell you, Gozie is not a good person. Okay, Amyn wanted me to read from a part about food. So I dog-eared some pages. I just hope I find them. Okay, yes. This is on page 49 of the... It starts at the bottom of page 49 of the Ueda edition. And just for context, this is in the beginning of the book. Kehinde has just come home. Taiye has been living at home for almost a year, and she's very anxious about Kehinde coming home with her husband, Farouk. And so she's just trying to avoid making eye contact or talking. She's avoidant. This is how you make mosa with your sister on the day she returns home. You're happy to occupy yourself with this task, as it keeps you from asking if she read the letters you wrote over the years but never intended to send. You'll need the following ingredients: several overripe plantains, 6 heaping tablespoons of flour, 4 teaspoons of fast-acting yeast, a 1/4 cup of warm water, atarodo peppers to your heat preference, a tablespoon of salt, and vegetable oil for frying. First things first, you'll have to activate the yeast. You can do this while failing to share with your sister the fact that Banke took it upon herself, without your consent or any sense of boundaries whatsoever, to mail the shoebox full of letters that you had poured yourself into with no intention of sharing ever. Taiye had never spoken to anyone with as much loathing as she did Banke after the girl presented her with the mailing slip like it was a gift. Second, step aside to keep from getting mushy plantain splatter on your kaftan as your sister enthusiastically mashes the plantains in a bowl. Third, add the salt as your mother sifts the flour into a large stainless steel bowl. Fourth, let your sister add the yeast solution and mashed plantain to the bowl of flour, as she seems the most excited of all 3 of you about this mosa situation. Fifth, cover the bowl and let the mixture rest for 10 to 15 minutes.
This book chart will not be complete if we don't talk about food. And initially, I had a very deep intellectual question to ask about how the characters feel hunger and longing for different things, and why you decided to explore cooking and feeding as a means to communicate. Instead, I want to lead those questions with this. Did you set out to write food porn, or this was just a delicious accident?
It was a delicious accident because I'm a gully, because I love food. In fact, I love food so much, I'm currently a bit sick because I've been eating everything this last few days. But more seriously, I love food writing, food TV, recipe. I buy recipe books. I don't use them to cook. I can't follow a recipe to save my life. I cook whatever I want. But I like to have them and read them. And yeah, I grew up, when we had DSTV, I grew up watching the Food Channel, the Cooking Channel. Some of my favorite writers are chefs. Anthony Bourdain, rest in peace. Chef turned writer, turned world traveling TV man. And so again, just my style is very much informed by the things I love. That's it. And again, like food as a means of communication is such a big thing in my life, you know. I mean, I think in a lot of people's lives, I don't really I don't remember being told, I love you a lot, but I remember being told, time to eat.
Come and eat.
Come and eat.
It's how we share love here. Have you
Exactly.
eaten?
Have you eaten? Eat more. more. So yeah,
Because I remember being spanked as a child. I wasn't told that my mom is going to say this, but it's the truth. She didn't tell me sorry, but she was like, "Do you want chicken, or do you want it grilled or fried?" That was the only way we could discuss. So I'm very grateful your book exists, because before I read your book, I had just finished reading Longchot Memoirs, and I was like, we need a fiction book that showcases food in Nigeria. Because most books is, everybody's eating jollof rice. And jollof rice.
Only jollof
you might
rice.
know jollof rice as like the most popular food in Nigeria, but the winner is rice and stew. Rice and stew is saving lives. So I was so happy. The way you talked about the food, the way it was written, everybody needs to read this book. You can smell it, it's a book you read with all your senses.
Yeah, I think similar to I wanted to immerse the reader. Like, I wanted to feel everything, because I think as some people, I don't know, I assume everyone, but I don't know, just walk through life feeling everything. Sometimes it's a lot, and I wanted to give that to readers.
Thank you
Thank
again. This is for both of you. Your books are first published in the UK and Canada, and we are in an era where a lot more readers are finding their way back to African fiction. But the complaint, again, I speak for the people on the streets. The complaint is most readers in Africa feel excluded when reading books from Africans in the diaspora. And both your novels retained their authenticity. Yes, that's the word. I mean, there are some phrases that you could have just vexed and translated for the North American readers, but you did not. There was no pandering, but you still did not alienate. What was the process in editing, aside the writing, the normal editing and writing? What was it like? Did you have to fight with your editors? Did you have teaching moments? What was that like? Yes, you can start.
Okay, for me, when...
Sorry. Your editors are both white.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Oh, well, okay. Well, my editor isn't white, actually. She's British, but she's Asian. Yes. So that also helped, because she was very conscious throughout the process of retaining the authenticity. So she wasn't like, she would just ask, "Oh, what is this about?" And once I explained the context, she'd be like, "Okay." And then a lot of people don't know this, but there's a glossary at the back of the novel, and it's like, for anybody that wants to complain, check the back, you understand? But and I did that just to be inclusive, because I've actually also had like foreigners reach out, and obviously they don't understand some of the words.
They
and
could Google.
Like
they could Google.
I know, but Google can give, like, I've Googled some things and I'm like, this is not correct.
Fair enough, but still, they can check.
Yeah, so I actually also, like I said, I wanted to be inclusive as well, so I actually put something at the back, like a glossary at the back, but then throughout the process, also for me, no, I'm not Igbo.
Yes.
So I had to also meet my friends, like if a friend of mine actually went like through line by line. Until tomorrow, I'm always grateful to him. Like, he really went through. We met at a workshop, and we've been friends ever since. And he actually went through, and he was like, no, this is not how we say it, like that. And so even for me, it was also a learning experience. But I'm very Nigerian. Like, no matter where you meet me, I'm very proud of the fact that I'm Nigerian. I wanted my book to reflect that. I wanted my book to sound like Nigerians. Like, I'm very, like, when I write dialogue, I'm very intentional about the fact that, like, you should be able to imagine these people from your sisters, from your, like, I know somebody that talks like this, you understand? Like, I've had people say, oh, I have an auntie like this, you understand? I wanted that, and again, I was inspired by other authors, like, I told you, one book that really speaks to me is Americana, and I've listened to her interviews, and she said she's very intentional. She's like, I'm not trying to please anybody. I'll just put Igbo word there. If you don't understand it, that's for you.
Understand from the context.
So that's how it was for me, but yeah.
Yeah, so nothing pains me more than when I read Nigerian, specifically Nigerian, because I can't speak for Ghana or Togo. When I read a Nigerian book and I'm like, why are you explaining Dodo? As if we don't know Dodo. So I didn't want that. And I also, I read a lot as a kid. I read Harry Potter. I'm not British. I don't know, especially as a kid, I didn't know half the foods they were referencing. Or there's a word, one of my favorite books is Icarus Girl by Helen Yemi. And the character has a friend named Siobhan, spelled, it's Celtic, I think, or Gaelic, called Siobhan. And I read it as Siobhan because I'd never heard it before. And it was okay. And then when I learned, I pronounced it properly. My point, though, is I read things I didn't have a cultural context for, and then I learned with the dictionary when I was younger, and then with Google. And I wanted, that's possible. I think the authors, I don't know if they were considering writers in that way, but I knew that as readers in that way, but as a reader, I could rise to the occasion, and I wanted to offer that as well. And my editor is a white woman, and my publisher is really radical, though. She was like, you don't need to translate anything. You don't even need to italicize non-English words. But Sha, give us context, She's like, Zobo, And so there's sometimes, when I read it now, I cringe, but there's sometimes I write Zobo hibiscus drink. I hate it. But it was the most, that was the most I was willing to do in terms of making something translating. Because the truth is, we're all readers, and we all have the ability and interest to reach deeper, Google, imagine. I also Nigerian literature. We have a tradition of unapologetic. I feel like we're lucky here. I grew up reading Nigerian authors and American and British, so it has been done before. I didn't have to look far to see that I could also do it and be blatant and honest and sincere without translating for white people.
Thank you both for staying true. Thank you for your service. Okay, we would start taking questions now. Oh, wow, okay. I paid them, by the way. Microphones?
Hi, Amyn. Hi, Aiwanose. Hi, Francesca. I really love Butter Honey Pig Bread. It was one of my favorite things I read last year. And the name got me, but then also the synopsis. When I read the synopsis, I immediately thought of Akweke Emezi's Freshwater, the Ogbanje narrative, the indulgence. So my question, first of all, is, did that book have any influence on your book? And also, what is the use of the Ogbanje narrative in your story? Is it a metaphor for something? If it is, what is it a metaphor for? And I just want to say thank you for just adding something to the canon of queer literature in Nigeria. That was really important for me in the story. And I have a massive crush on Taiye. I would like to ask, Taiye is a character that it's so easy to villainize because of her indulgence, because of the strained relationship she has with her sister, her girlfriend. What was it like balancing what someone might say are the negative aspects of Taiye's character? I wouldn't say she's a morally ambiguous character, but certainly leaves you here and there. So how was it like writing someone that you could love so deeply and sympathize so deeply with, but had all these negative aspects to her character? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I deeply appreciate everything you've said. I'll start from the first question. I'm a huge fan of Akweke's work, huge fan. But I started writing my book in 2013, and when I read about Freshwater, I was like, shit, I can't read this. I can't read it until I'm done because, insecurities arise. I'm like, then I won't write mine, So then I didn't. And then when I was done and I put in my first few drafts, I read it and I was like, oh yeah, it's fine. I have nothing to worry about. So I wasn't inspired by it, but I adore it. It's really, that character, I think, similar to many complicated characters that I love is, really challenging because you're like, I'm rooting for you, but why are you like this? And that leads to the second question I think about Taiye. I love a complex character because none of us are one thing, And as I wanted to write a queer character that wasn't shying away from the negative stereotypes that people have of queerness. People think queer people are just debaucherous and morally ambiguous. Okay, all people, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender, can be like that. So, okay, you know. It was definitely a risk as a Nigerian, writing a Nigerian character who spends a lot of the story in Nigeria. But I was intentional not to make that the focus. Like that aspect of her identity is similar to Kehinde's straightness. It's just one aspect. Her main issues is that she has no boundaries. That's the main issue. Yeah. And what was the other question? No. No, it's not a metaphor, at least not for me in this book. It was more like an experiment of belief and perception. So, you know, Kambirinachi believes she's an Ogbanje, do you? Like, you've read the book, you've read her point of view, you've read Kehinde's perspective of her, Taiye's perspective of her, Kenny's perspective of her. You know, like, what do you think? So I'm really interested in, like, the unreliable narrator, where you're like, is it really, did that happen, or are you kind of crazy, you know? Which, like, both can be true, I think, yeah.
Thank you. Good morning, my name is Kingsley. First of all, congratulations to both of you on your debut novel.
Thank you.
And also, shout out to Amyn. She's been such an apostle of both your books. I discovered both your books through Amyn. And I would say to everyone here...
I'm here for president.
Yes, exactly.
Amyn
If you're
awesome.
an author or aspiring author, you will definitely want to get close to Amyn because she will make your book blow. However, I would say if she's very objective and she's effective, right? So keep that in mind as well.
I think this question is for you. This is fun.
No, there is a question here. So for me, the question really is, at what point during your writing process, you know, when you were birthing this book, so like, did you know how you're seeing a movie and then there's this key moment for you and you're like, it blows everyone's mind, right? Did you have that moment where you're like, I'm writing this chapter, this paragraph, and I'm like, man, this book is going to bust brain. Like, did you have any, and if, what's that for you? Thank you.
So she's asked me to go first, which is just the coward's way of me, like, pushing me there. So, okay. I'm a reader, and I think authors should be readers, right? Because when you're a reader, even if you're not sure, you know when something isn't clicking. Do you get what I mean? I remember I wrote the first 10 chapters. I knew there was something. I was like, this thing, you know, because I'm a reader. Right? And then so I sent it to my friend. And when she confirmed what I felt, I was like, okay, I'm not crazy, you know. And so for me, that moment was when, so I'd been writing this draft for I started writing in 2016. At the end of 2018, I had something. I started working with someone on editing it. And then by 2020, we stopped working together. No, by the end of 2019, I went for a workshop. And at the workshop, the person in charge basically gave advice that was really poignant. And she said, forget your agenda, what is the story? And I realized at that point that was the issue with my draft. I was so bogged down by this anger. The anger was literally blocking my writing. I had my agenda. I was like, this is what I want to say, you know? And it was, and I'd lost the story. And I went back after that workshop, and I spent the next 3, people don't believe this, I rewrote my entire, I'd been writing this novel for how many years, and I rewrote my entire novel in 3 weeks. Everybody's in 3 weeks. I was just like, oh my God, it was really such a light bulb moment. And for me, I finished writing that chapter. I was like, I can buy this book. And as a reader, once you feel that, you know what, this is something, I'll go to a bookshop and I'll pay my own money. I feel you've gotten to that point where you have a decent draft. Yeah, so, yeah, so that's it for me.
Very quick. When I was like, again, is towards the end, where Kambirinachi's POV changes. I was like, you know, feeling myself. That was it for me.
That part is chef's kiss. It's still, sometimes I go back just to read that part. I'm like, wow, that's genius. So yes, you should definitely get the book. More questions?
Hi. Congratulations to you both on your debut.
Thank you.
I must confess I haven't read either of them. I have heard about butter, honey, pig, and bread on Instagram, but I've been on a physical book ban for the year, so I haven't bought a single physical book in 2022, which is an achievement, I must say. My question is for both of you first. So you talked about language and not translating the non-English words that you use, and I don't know if you use multiple languages, because I write from a perspective of a Yoruba Muslim woman, which means my books contain Yoruba, but it also contains Nigerian Pidgin English and Arabic. So it's sometimes I have a difficulty in balancing, if you are somebody from my perspective, then you can decipher which of the three languages I'm talking in right now. But anybody else, it can get quite confusing. So do you have multiple languages showing up in your work, and how do you handle that? That's the first question. The second question is for you, Aiwa. So you talk about the rage you wanted your readers to feel and the joy of motherhood. Yeah, all of us know that. I was wondering, at what point do you feel like, how do I want my readers to feel the rage, but how do I also hold space for not overwhelm them with all of that rage? Because being a woman in Africa and with all of our baggage can be overwhelming. And then for you to purposely set out to incite that rage, do you feel like there has to be some form of obligation to you so that you don't, so that you don't drown us in that rage? Because I know I feel that, so that's my question.
That's actually a great question. Wow, I've never had someone ask me that, drown, that wasn't my intention, no, I'm sorry. Well, to be honest, my intention was to hold a mirror up to society, to say, because I don't want only women to read my book. That's ridiculous, A lot of my early readers were guys, the person that helped me with the line edits also, but my intention was to hold a mirror up to society, and not just women, but I wanted everyone to feel the rage. So I've had men as well reach out to me, say, no, this thing, I've not really thought about it so much, but reading your book really made me think about it, and it's really messed up, what can we do, and, how can we, sometimes you actually, because sometimes some things go on around you, and you don't think about, it's just what happens, and then someone points it out, and it's not just about this book, but just in general, things go on around you all the time, and you don't think about it too much, and then maybe you go to another country and it's different, or someone says something, and you're like, wait, this thing, that's true, and so that was really my intention. I wanted to hold the mirror and look at this thing, how does it look, are you, does this make sense, and so that was my intention. To answer your second question about language, and then before I let Francesca speak, I've been speaking for so long, my novel has a bit of Yoruba, because actually my mom is Yoruba, and so I understand the language very well. I use phrases, and Igbo and Pidgin, because I speak Pidgin. I love Pidgin English. Listen, when I'm a friend abroad, a Nigerian friend, I immediately speak to Pidgin, so nobody understand what we're saying. I love it so much, And so I think as a writer, it's your obligation to show the reality of where you are, If people speak Pidgin, they speak Arabic, they speak, include it. You and your editor work out how to, how to, but make sure, put it there, because it's how you speak, it's how, you're literally, as a writer, you're representing reality, so reality is reality, so why change it for anybody? Yeah.
Thank you for your question. I feel very similar. So my book is mostly in English, but there's Pidgin, there's Igbo, there's Yoruba, there's French, and there's a tiny bit of Hausa. All within my cultural context, right? So when Nigerians are talking, and if they're the kind of Nigerians that will be speaking Pidgin to each other or Yoruba, that's what they'll be speaking. So now I don't speak any of those languages fluently except for French and English. So I needed help. My friend Emmanuel helped me with the Igbo, especially. But what I'm interested in, the kind of storyteller I want to be is the kind that my stories are just gist, hot gist, And so how would I talk to my friends? Like, that's how I write. So there are some friends I speak Pidgin with, Emmanuel, because I know Emmanuel from Canada where I live. When we don't want people around us to understand us, we speak Pidgin. So, things like that show up. Yeah, I think writing in all the languages that get the message across. The world is, we're here speaking English, but like most of the world doesn't speak English, So I think that's the beauty of storytelling and language is you really have a lot of tools to build a world and tell a story.
Hope we answered your question.
Okay. Hi, Francesca. Hi, Aiwanose. Hi, my president. I discovered butter honey pig bread through so kudos to her. So I have a question for Francesca. My friend said I should ask this question. She can't be here today, so I think we're discussing this book in July, So I promised her that I was going to ask this question today, because she pointed something and I was like, oh, I don't even know what this means. So I said I was going to ask today. Kenneth's character, I hope I don't drop any spoiler. Kenneth's character, I think Amyn already mentioned something similar to that. Kenneth's character, the beekeeper, when he came to visit Kambirinachi and her husband, he said something. He said, something about, he had seen Kambirinachi before, and that was their first meeting. So I want to confirm today, is that like some kind of relation to Ogbanje or something else? Because I know Mercy's own was clear with Kambirinachi, so I wanted to ask, is it like some kind of relation to Ogbanje? Is that what he was talking about, or did he just say it because like he felt like he had seen somebody that she looks like or something?
Let me tell you the truth. I don't know. And I like that, right? Because I don't know. When I was writing that scene, that's what he said. I know how that makes me sound, but that's how I write sometimes. I'm just kind of transcribing what I'm, witnessing a bit. And sometimes I can, change it. But yeah, maybe he knows her from before. Maybe he just thinks she's fine and he couldn't manage. He was just like, my friend's wife is fine. Like, do I know you? Some people are very inappropriate to their friends, partners. So maybe it was that. I don't really know. Yeah, I'm sorry to disappoint if that's disappointing.
That's why I call it a conspiracy theory. There are lots more. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for attending our chat.
Thank you, everyone.
Please make sure you buy the book. You need this book in your life. I'm not even playing. Buy the book downstairs. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Amyn. A round of applause again for these brilliant writers.